I'm 87 years old, and I want to tell you something that took me most of my life to figure out. I used to care about everything, what people thought of me, whether I was successful enough, whether my house was big enough, whether my kids were proud enough, whether I was doing it all right. I carried all of it, every single day, like a man walking through life with a 100-pound pack on his back. And then, one by one, I started putting things down, not because I gave up, because I finally woke up. And what happened next changed everything. My name is George. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky. My father was a farmer. My mother cleaned houses. We didn't have much, but we had enough. And from the time I was old enough to understand the world, I understood one thing clearly. You had to earn your place in it. You had to work for it, prove yourself, show people you were worth something. So that's what I did. For 60 years, I worked, I performed, I worried, I tried. And somewhere around my 82nd birthday, sitting alone on my back porch watching the sun go down, I realized something that hit me like a truck. I had spent my entire life caring about things that were already gone, and I had almost no time left to care about the things that actually mattered. That night I made a list, not a bucket list, not a to-do list, a stop list. 5 things I was going to stop caring about, and I want to share them with you. Because if you're still young enough to use this, I don't want you to waste the years I wasted. And if you're my age, maybe it's not too late to put the pack down. The first thing I stopped caring about was what other people thought of me. I know, you've heard this before. Everyone says it. Don't worry about what others think. But here's what nobody tells you. You can know it in your head for 40 years and still not live it. I knew it at 30. I was still performing at 70, still choosing my words carefully at dinner parties, still dressing for other people, still editing myself, still shrinking. And then one day I was at a neighbor's barbecue. A man I barely knew made a comment about my old truck, said something like, "George, you've been driving that thing since the 90s. You doing okay?" He laughed. A few people chuckled, and I felt that old familiar heat rise up in my chest, that old shame, that need to explain myself, to prove I wasn't poor, to prove I was fine. And then something shifted. Something very quiet shifted inside me, and I thought, I'm 82 years old. I don't have time for this anymore. Not this man, not his opinion, not this moment. I smiled. I took a sip of my lemonade and I walked away. And I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Light, just light. Like something lifted off me that I didn't even know I was still carrying. Other people's opinions are a cage you build yourself, and you hold the key. Size, you always have. The second thing I stopped caring about was being right. I spent most of my adult life needing to win arguments with my wife, with my sons, with my co-workers, with strangers on the news. I had to be right, not because I was arrogant, but because being right felt safe. If I was right, I was in control. If I was right, the world made sense. But here's what being right cost me. It cost me evenings with my wife that turned into cold silences. It cost me years with my oldest son who stopped calling because every conversation turned into a debate. It cost me friendships that dried up because nobody wants to spend time with a man who always has to win. The last real argument I had with my son before we made things right, I was right. I was completely, factually, objectively right. And I won. And he didn't speak to me for 8 months. Was it worth it? Not even close. The moment I stopped needing to win, I started actually listening. And the moment I started listening, people started wanting to talk to me. My son calls me every Sunday now, every single Sunday. That started the day I called him and said, I think I've been wrong about a lot of things. Pause. Not about the argument, about the way I'd been living. He was quiet for a long time. And then he said, Dad, I've been waiting my whole life to hear you say that. The third thing I stopped caring about was keeping up. You know what I mean, the keeping up. The neighbor gets a new car, something stirs in you. Your friend retires to Florida, something twists in your stomach. Your brother-in-law buys a lake house, and suddenly your perfectly good life starts to feel like a consolation prize. I did this for 50 years. I compared my insides to everyone else's outsides, and I always came up short. Because that's what comparison does. It's a rigged game. You compare your worst moments to their highlight reel. You compare your doubts to their confidence. You compare your empty bank account to their new boat. And the comparison never ends. There's always someone ahead, always someone doing better, always someone who makes you feel like you're losing a race you never even agreed to run. When I was 79, my doctor told me my heart was showing some early signs of stress. He asked me about my lifestyle. I told him I worked hard. He said, Are you happy? I didn't answer right away. Pause. He said, That pause is your answer. I drove home that day and I looked at my life, my real life, not the life I'd been measuring against everyone else's, my actual life. And it was good. It had always been good. I just couldn't see it because I kept looking sideways instead of straight ahead. Exhales. I stopped looking sideways. It was the best thing I ever did for my heart. The fourth thing I stopped caring about was the past. Not forgetting it. Stopping the carrying of it. There's a difference. I had things in my past that I dragged with me for decades. Decisions I'd made. Things I'd said. Moments of weakness. Moments of cruelty. A business I'd failed. A friendship I destroyed with one stupid, selfish choice when I was 40. I replayed these things in the middle of the night, on long drives, in the shower, my own personal greatest hits of shame. And here's the thing about the past. It doesn't change, not 1 second of it. You can revisit it 1,000,000 times, with every version of yourself you'll ever be, and it will be exactly the same every single time. The only thing that changes is how much of your present you sacrifice to look at it. At 83, I tracked down the man whose friendship I destroyed 43 years earlier. I found him through his daughter. I wrote him a letter, a real letter on paper with a stamp. I told him what I'd done, why I'd done it, that I was sorry, that I'd thought about it for 40 years. He called me 3 weeks later. We talked for 2 hours. He said, "George, I forgave you a long time ago. I was waiting for you to forgive yourself." Crying, I cried on that phone, not from sadness, from the release of something I'd been holding so long I thought it was part of me. The fifth thing I stopped caring about was the future, not planning for it, fearing it. I spent a lot of my life afraid of what was coming, afraid of getting sick, afraid of running out of money, afraid of being alone, afraid of dying. And all that fear, it stole my present. Every quiet evening I could have enjoyed, I spent worrying about next year. Every moment of peace I could have had, I spent calculating what might go wrong. Fear of the future is just imagination turned against yourself. And at 87, here's what I know about the future. You can't control it. You never could. You can prepare, yes. You can be smart, yes. But the obsessive, grinding, middle-of-the-night fear, it doesn't protect you from anything. It just robs you of now. And now is all any of us ever actually have. I woke up this morning. The sun came through my kitchen window the way it always does. I made my coffee. I sat in my chair. And I didn't worry about anything. Not my health, not my money, not what's coming. I just sat there and felt the warmth of the coffee cup in my hands and watched the light move across the floor. Exhales, and it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. I'm 87 years old. I've made every mistake on this list. I've paid every price. And I'm telling you, from the other side of all of it, the things you're carrying right now, most of them aren't worth the weight. Put them down. Not someday. Not when things settle. Now. While you still have enough road ahead of you to walk lighter. I don't know how much time I have left. Nobody does. But I know this. The years I've lived since I stopped caring about the wrong things have been the best years of my life. Quieter, simpler, fuller. Don't wait until you're 87 to figure that out. Please, don't wait.